Ian Duncan, Conservative MEP for Scotland. You've arrived now in Brussels. It's somewhere you've been before, but what do you make of the place and your kind of first instincts, your first look inside the European Parliament as an MEP?
Well, I spent 7 years here working for the Scottish Parliament in Brussels, and the first thing I discovered here is a lot is going on. It's clearly a place where business is done. Now, things are just beginning to build up to that. Most people are just trying to find their feet, but the important thing for me is to hit the ground running. I've got to make sure that I start delivering for Scotland right away.
And when you say you're going to be delivering for Scotland, where are you going to focus your energy? Because there's so many different topics you could take an interest in here.
Well, exactly. And to a significant degree, much of that will depend upon the committees, and they will be allocated this week. I'm pushing very strongly for the issues which affect Scotland. So as you can imagine, the energy brief will be a big one, the research brief. Fisheries, again, will be very important. There's a whole range of things which will impact on Scotland, and I'm hoping to draw upon my own skills. I spent 4 years working for Scottish fishermen in the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. I'm a geologist by training. I've worked for an oil company. So I'm hoping I can bring these skills and this expertise to the committees and to delivering for Scotland.
And kind of politically, how do you think things perhaps need to be done differently? There's a lot of talk about the reform agenda needed in the EU and so forth. How does that relate back to Scotland?
Well, you're absolutely right. I campaigned on the need for reform, and I belong to a group, the ECR, which has the word reform in its title. It's the buzzword right now. People want to see change. They want to see things improved, less bureaucracy and so on. And as the groups begin to form, that is the buzzword of the moment. So I suspect we will see over the course of this mandate quite a significant difference from how things were done before.
And in what kind of terms, where do you think that's going to come to life? How do you reform in reality here in the EU? Because things are perhaps very different to the way they're seen from Westminster or Holyrood.
Well, absolutely. I think in truth, much of this comes down to, let's just start at the beginning, the Juncker question. Now, Jean-Claude Juncker is a man who has solutions of the past. I think you've got to find now a Commission President who's able to look forward and find solutions for the future. Because actually things have not been working as they should be working, and we've got to try and find new ways of doing business, new ways of focusing upon the priorities that the people have. We can't exist here in some sort of Euro bubble, entirely detached from real people, real issues and real problems. We've got to reconnect, otherwise there's really little point in us being here at all.
You mentioned your background in for example, the Fisheries Federation and so forth, but why an MEP? Why did you want to come here and represent Scotland as a member of the European Parliament?
Well, probably two reasons. One, I believe an MEP, a single MEP can make a difference, the power of one. Especially now with the Lisbon Treaty empowering the Parliament, then an individual can amend, can bring about amendments, can form alliances with his group and others to change pieces of legislation. And the reality so much starts here and weaves its way through Westminster and eventually arrives at Holyrood. If you want to make the biggest difference, make it at the beginning. And the second reason is, again, I think much can be done here that Scotland will require. So again, we need to be focusing upon things like free trade agreements, things which encourage growth, things which encourage jobs. So much can be done out here. And in truth, cooperation is often easier to secure out here because people are recognising it's about issues rather than sometimes about the partisan aspects which can be so important back home.
And briefly, that's what I wanted to end on, is that cooperation, because is that going to be something we're going to see between the Scottish MEPs? Because we have got a different makeup this time. There's a UKIP MEP and of course Labour also represented, no longer the Lib Dems. So how do you envisage working with your other colleagues representing Scotland?
Well, it's a very good question. The concept of Team Scotland will be important. As I said earlier, I spent 7 years working with the MEPs from Scotland, and I went to university with Catherine Styler. I was sorry to see George go in so many ways. He was a very powerful advocate for farmers. The next mandate will be different, however. UKIP will be a challenge in lots of different ways. We have heard of their reputation for not turning up. Well, Scotland needs full-time MEPs to do a full-time job, so I think in some respects they will be on watch to make sure that they are delivering. But in truth, 6 can make a difference, and I think if we work together we can make an even bigger difference.
Is that perhaps an olive leaf, or an olive branch, if I can put it like that, out to your colleagues that you're prepared to kind of work together?
Oh, absolutely. I think on many occasions, when you look at the issues, solutions are actually common across parties. They're not always driven by dogma or partisan ideology. And I think what we need to do is make sure we're listening to the people of Scotland, finding solutions that work, solutions that are not too bureaucratic, and in trying as best we can through collaboration to focus and deliver.